Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Heidi Rose, and I am professor and chair of the communication department. And I'm also Alicia Utech's thesis advisor. And I'm so pleased to welcome you all here to our communication department studio for Big Little Sister. So first I want to start we had opening night on Thursday. We've got closing day today, and I'm very excited to have you all here. So I want to start with some thanks, because this is an extremely collaborative enterprise, and we couldn't have done it without a whole lot of assistance. So thanks to my colleagues Sherry Bowen and Shauna McDonald for being on Alicia's thesis committee. Thanks to Chad Foz, my colleague, who is our digital media coordinator, and provided tremendous technical assistance and support pretty much completely remotely, which was amazing. Thanks to my colleague Evan Shares and our performance studies student Jake Metzger for doing sound and lights. And thanks also to our media production faculty and so many students who share this space. We share this space with them, and that can be challenging at times, and we're really grateful for the way that they accommodated all of Alicia's needs during this performance week. And then finally, last but very much not least, I want to thank Alicia's family for being here from Minnesota, because as you will see, their presence is incredibly important to this piece. Okay, now just a couple of announcements. If you like what you see here today, we have 2 more performance events next month. One is the aforementioned Jake Metzger, who is doing his solo senior capstone performance right here in the studio, and that's on April 15th and 18th. And then on the 16th, we're doing a performance showcase, a virtual showcase that features students who are participating in performance studies classes this semester. So these are 2 really wonderful performances coming up in April, and look for more information in the coming weeks. Okay, now to Big Little Sister. For those who may not be as familiar with this method, this is a really good example of an autoethnographic performance. So Alicia used certain tools of ethnography to turn the lens, the critical, analytical, scholarly lens inward to the self, to answer questions about how her life and herself relate to larger cultural, historical, social, political questions and issues. And so the performance is both method and product. It's a method of inquiry, right, itself, and it's also the medium through which her work is produced. So what you have here is it's serving as at once a process and a product. It's also a very intimate piece, and it was designed to be an in-person experience with our in-person audience. And we're thrilled that there are so many of you who are viewing virtually, but we just want you to keep in mind that it wasn't designed for a camera. The piece runs a little less than 40 minutes, and after it, we're going to have a talk back, and the chat online will be monitored. So if you have comments, if you have questions, we would love for you to engage in conversation afterward. And with that, I will ask my in-person audience to just make sure you turned off anything that makes noise. And here is Big Little Sister.
The Sunshine Room. That's our nickname for my childhood bedroom, thanks to its bright yellow paint and Tweety Bird wallpaper that's still there to this day. It is really a mess, though. It needs a good cleaning.
Kids, we're going to be helping out with some. No. Tommy, you put that back. That is not a toy. No. Okay, we're going to be helping with some house cleaning. We're going to be opening up some windows, let the sunshine in. And Sarah, no, you can't do that. No. Brian, would you actually help and stop laughing at me?
That's my older sister, Amelia. That bit got her to the quarterfinals in a voice acting competition this winter. Yeah, they cut over 300 other people, but they kept her in. How awesome is that? Oh, let's see, what can I do to tell you about our relationship? The Sibling Slam book, what it's really like to have a brother or sister with special needs. I met the editor of this, Don Meyer, fantastic guy. Reader, what should we know about you? I'm in 3rd grade and love to read. That is the understatement of the year, let me tell you. Oh, what else have we got? This one's a good one for learning a little bit more about Amelia. The Way I See It, A Personal Look at Autism and Asperger's by Temple Grandin, PhD. Guys, if you're not familiar with Temple Grandin, let me tell you, you need to look her up. She is amazing. She's basically the original autistic self-advocate. Another one from when I was a kid. Topics in Autism, 2nd edition. Siblings of Children with Autism. A Guide for Families by Sandra L. Harris, PhD, and Beth A. Glassberg, PhD. Yeah, not one, but 2 PhDs on this baby. You know, I got this when I was about 7 years old. If that didn't signal a future career in academia, I frankly don't know what would have. But enough of me talking about Amelia. She's perfectly capable about telling you about herself.
Amelia and I will be in your class this semester or year. Some of the things I think you should know about me are, I have Asperger's syndrome, I have a hard time understanding body language, I think in pictures, and sometimes I can get really stressed.
Oh boy, can she ever. I mean, you gotta understand, this was the mid to early 2000s. My sister and I, we were children, elementary schoolers. She was going into 5th grade, I was going into 2nd. It really didn't mean anything to my classmates if I went up to them and was like, we figured it out, Amelia's an Aspie. So I came up with an easy explanation pretty quickly. Okay, so listen up, here's the deal. Amelia has Asperger's syndrome, which means that her mental age is a bit behind her age, so she acts younger than she really is. And she struggles with understanding body language. So she might stand too close to you in conversation, even if you back up, she'll move closer again because she doesn't really get personal space. And she'll probably only talk about the things that she wants to talk about. That explanation cuts it for 8-year-olds, but adults tend to want a little more real information than that. In 2005, my parents wrote this 2-page letter to explain to our extended family and friends what having Asperger's syndrome really meant. And some of it is outdated now because of Asperger's being folded in under autism spectrum disorder, but the ending of it remains the same. She is what she is, and she cannot help it. Before this diagnosis, she was our sweet little Amelia, who was very smart and very sensitive. After this diagnosis, she is still that same sweet little girl. She's not fragile or mentally unstable and does not need sympathy. We do need to realize she has different reactions and must deal accordingly with them. It is okay to help her recognize inappropriate social behavior, but understand that this is not willful misbehavior and correct with compassion. Correcting with compassion. That's something that some people are better at than others.
Is a part of who I am, but it's not all of who I am.
I spend a lot of time thinking about the way that my sisters and my brains work differently. And I'm not just talking about her Asperger's, that's kind of the duh part of it. I don't think I am anyways. Like, take for example, how we each categorize spoken communication. She thinks in pictures that change over time. I mean, just look how abstract they were when she was 12 versus how concrete they are now, even if this is just a small representation of what she sees in her head. Whereas me, I think in words, big block letters, that's pretty much what goes through my head when you're talking to me. Is that part of her Asperger's? I'm really not sure. On the one hand, Temple Grandin, remember her? She talks about thinking in pictures as a key trait of autistic people. On the other hand, a lot of people who I ask say that they think in pictures, and they don't even really have the Asperger's personality that my mom likes to tease me about having. It's one of those things that I don't think I'll ever really have an answer for. But hey, you get used to those when your sister's not diagnosed until she's 10 years old. That's not to say that we didn't know that something was up. Trust me, everybody knew.
Never not aware of it, you know? And since I got diagnosed the summer before 5th grade, these were the people that had dealt with me being like this since preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade. Mom said there were people brought into my class to talk about it, and they didn't come in until the last half hour. She tried to tell them they'd need more time, but they were like, oh no, we know what they're gonna ask and we'll cover it, it's okay. They had to hold the buses because my classmates had so many questions. And they still had to be like, okay, we have to stop now. You have to get on your bus.
Yeah, for a small town where everybody's had everybody figured out since kindergarten, trust me, if you were in the building, you knew when my sister had a meltdown. And those people were often in the room for the start of them. It really didn't seem to take much to set her off back in those days. Big echoey spaces, too long under fluorescent lights, lack of windows. Well, at least nobody's wearing hot pink. That was one perk of uniforms in elementary school. Nobody could wear the colors that set Amelia off, except for on the occasional dress down day. That's not to say that there weren't other stressors around, though.
Some of the things that make me really stressed are bright colors, especially vivid pink and muddy green, fluorescent lights, loud noises and echoes like on the bus or in gym class, when kids are not following rules, when I feel like nobody is listening to me, working in groups, bullies, bugs, especially flying ones, bees, flies, mosquitoes, gnats, etc. And when someone uses the phrase, oh my God.
Let me tell you, nobody likes a stressed out sibling. I know that typical siblings have a very push and pull relationship where they make fun of each other and then go tattle to mom and dad, but my sister and I, we weren't like that. We couldn't be. Part of being an Aspie is that Amelia is a very literal person. For example, when an old dog of ours got sick and then unexpectedly got better, our parents had the brilliant idea to sit us down at the kitchen table, all serious, be like, okay, so look, we didn't really budget for his continuing food and vet bills, so now that we get to keep the dog, we're gonna have to get rid of one of you two. Yeah, I burst out laughing right away. Amelia started crying. I got that it was a joke. We were both in elementary school, but I did what any sister would do. I looked out for her. And she had her ways of looking out for me, too. Reader, how would you describe your relationship with your sib? Extremely close.
I was 7, Alicia was 5, and we both got Game Boy Colors. I got Pokemon Silver version, which is the second generation, the Johto region. And Alicia got Blue version, a first generation game set in Kanto. I don't remember what I named my character, but I remember spending 10-15 minutes on the rival name trying to find where those darn question marks were. And I finally found them, and I named him what he told me his name was. Question mark, question mark, question mark. And I didn't skip the tutorial that was actually optional because I wanted to know how to play the game.
I thought it was like the show!
She got stuck, and I found out she only had her starter Pokemon, a Venusaur now fully evolved, and nothing else. So I told her to go to the Pokemart to get some Pokeballs. The what? The building with the blue roof.
She made me go all the way back to the start of the game, to Pallet Town, and walk through every route and every town that I had already beaten. But before I was allowed to do any of that, she made me go into the very first patch of grass and just stand there until a Pidgey came along, and I got to just chuck Pokeball after Pokeball after Pokeball at it until I finally caught it because my Venusaur would have just knocked it out in one hit. And then I had to walk through every town and every route. I couldn't fight any of the trainers anymore because I'd already beaten them, but at least I was fighting wild Pokemon and catching them and leveling them up like you're supposed to through the entire game. Now, I know that sounds like an obnoxious older sister thing to do of like, let me show you how to play your game. But when you're two little kids as obsessed with that series as we were, there's no cooler way of showing off how great you are than knowing what's up with those games or the show.
And I'll teach you Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all, Pokemon.
I have a lot of really good memories like that from my childhood, and a lot of them do revolve around our shared fandoms. Pokemon, of course, has a very special place in our hearts. It will always be the OG, our truest love. Oh, what else have we got here? Doctor Who, a little more recent, The Eighth Doctor was our first, and as any good Whovian knows, you never forget your first Doctor. Final Fantasy VII, a little more recent, a little more current. The reason that we desperately need a PlayStation 5 as soon as they are not selling out immediately. Another OG, superheroes. DC, Marvel, doesn't matter. We love all of them. Though I will say she's a little more inclined towards Marvel. I'm a little more inclined towards DC. I'm right. Oh, man, here's another one from way back then. House Rules by Jodi Picoult. I probably shouldn't have read this as a kid. There's some inappropriate content in here. I was in middle school, so it wasn't so bad, but it was just so rare to find a book that actually got it, you know? I was running around begging everybody to read this book. Jacob Hunt is a teen with Asperger's syndrome. He's hopeless at reading social cues or expressing himself well to others, though he is brilliant in many ways. But he has a special focus on one subject, forensic analysis. A police scanner in his room clues him into crime scenes, and he's always showing up and telling the cops what to do, and he's usually right. But when Jacob's small hometown is rocked by a terrible murder, law enforcement comes to him. Jacob's behaviors are hallmark Asperger's, but they look a lot like guilt to the local police. And suddenly the Hunt family, who only want to fit in, are directly in the spotlight. For Jacob's mother, Emma, it's a brutal reminder of the intolerance and misunderstanding that always threaten her family. For his brother, Theo, it's another indication of why nothing is normal because of Jacob. And over this small family, the soul-searing question looms. Did Jacob commit murder?
Feelings about the book. It's hard not to get agitated by the system being so set against. Like, I had to take it in small doses because it's like, he can't help it, stop it. And so, of course, the times that I'm watching him do these things that I've learned how not to do and watching the system burn him for it, and like, I'm cringing and I'm angry and I'm just, okay, we're done for the night. And having the chapters from the mom's and the younger brother's perspective, I don't like the parallels for you guys either. I acknowledge that they are accurate, but that doesn't mean that I like that they are. And I don't think that it would have been a good idea for me to have read the book before, because I would not have been able to leave it as parallels if I had read it when the two of you did. I was not emotionally capable of saying, these are the characters, this is my family. They are similar, but not the same. I think it's accurate and well written, but I don't like it.
All of that is totally valid. And yet, Riding the Bus with My Sister, a book that I've owned and loved for so long, since I was 7 years old, that I don't even have the original cover anymore. Nonfiction, older sister spends a year with her younger sister, who was diagnosed in the 60s with mild mental retardation. Wonder. Fiction, some chapters from the perspective of the older sister of the main character, who has facial deformities. Rules. Fiction, older sister and her younger brother with autism. And House Rules. These were the 4 books for me as a kid that actually told the story of being a Sim. I had others that tried to give explanations or where I could write in my own experiences, but these told the story. And even of the 4 of them, this one. So I run interference. I'm the one who physically drags Jacob away from a conversation when he's starting to freak people out by being too intense. I'm the one who tells him to stop flapping when he's nervous on the bus because it makes him look like a total nutcase. I'm the one who goes to his classes before I go to my own, just to let the teachers know that Jacob had a rough morning because we unexpectedly ran out of soy milk. In other words, I act like the big brother, even though I'm not. This was the one book to understand that being the younger sibling didn't always mean being the little one.
Quest. The now of Wolfspot. They didn't think too far in the future or the past. They kind of were in the now. The now of Wolfspot. It's kind of what I try to do in general. Good things and bad things. Because otherwise, I hold on to things too long. Which is why effects of things I keep. But the memory of a specific thing, unless it was a big event or a funny story, I don't usually keep them. If I really try, I can after a while, but I like to hold on to the after effects of this improved, this got better, this changed, rather than here's what happened that caused these things. The feelings are kind of part of that. Depends on how much I want them to be. There are some feelings that I don't want and some I do. And it's not like I forget that the things ever happened. If someone talks about the thing, there are good odds that I'll remember the thing. But they go to a different part of my brain that I don't just pull from on my own.
God, I wish I could do that. And you heard her, keeping the after effects of this changed, this got better, that's amazing. But here's another example of our brains working differently. She remembers those things, I remember the details. Who stood where, whose phone we used. And if I remember the feelings, they tend to be the negative ones. For example, take the day-long safe driving course that the two of us took in a classroom with fluorescent lights and no windows. I remember at the start of the day, the instructors, two white dudes, probably in their 40s or 50s, they started off by showing a video that showed pretty graphic consequences of texting and driving. They did tell us that we could close our eyes, and I remember telling Amelia to do so, and also plug her ears, because I remembered how upset such videos had made her during driver's ed. I remember closing my eyes, not plugging my ears, peeking, and really wishing that I hadn't. I remember eating our lunches outside in our brown paper bags and knowing that a meltdown was coming. See, when my sister is upset, it radiates off of her no matter what. But there's a big difference between upset and meltdown. It's kind of like if a thunderstorm is coming. Anywhere in the world, people will get headaches and stuffy noses from barometric pressure changes and other cool sciencey things that I don't know. But in Minnesota, we smell a storm coming. There's a kind of anticipation that we're attuned to in that way. And I guess I don't know if it's specifically a Minnesota thing to smell a storm coming, but I talk about it out here and people laugh at me, so I think it is. And don't get me wrong, no one's so insensitive as to laugh when you talk about your sister's meltdowns, but when she's having one, I remember everybody after lunch taking a turn on one of the 4 driving simulators that they have. If you've watched The Big Bang Theory, the episode where they try to teach Sheldon how to drive, and Penny hits him in the face with a pillow to simulate the airbags, kind of like that. This simulation was full of all kinds of rule breakers. That way you would be aware of everybody else breaking the rules and still following the rules yourself. My attention during it was a crack of lightning across the sky. I was irritated directly at the little annoyances. The friend in the back seat who wouldn't shut up and who wanted you to call another friend and things like that. My sister's tension was the flash of lightning spilling across the entire sky. See, one of the rule breakers was a jaywalker. You had the green light, he ran across the crosswalk anyways. And on her turn, Amelia hit him. Now obviously that's not a good thing. The simulator showed him lying there, you could see the red lights on the edge of the screen, you could hear the sirens, and then it all went dark. And then it came back to a video of a real live person, a judge, giving a sentence for vehicular manslaughter. And then it went dark again. Game over, you're done, that's it. Now I was already standing next to my sister, with my hand on her shoulder, watching her like she had watched me. I could already feel her starting to shake, see the tears spilling down her cheeks. But the sound of sirens drew a crowd. My sister and I were the youngest people in that room. And yet this group of actual adults crowded around her with shit-eating grins on their faces to watch the fallout. And the instructors, they didn't do anything about it. I was the one who chased the crowds away from her. I think I was one sentence short of threatening to punch one guy. I was the one who took her to another classroom that still had fluorescent lights and no windows, but at least we knew it was unlocked. I was the one who sat on the floor with her, on her lap, because pressure helps her calm down during a meltdown. I was the one who called our parents from my cell phone and explained to them what had happened because she couldn't get the words out through her tears. I stayed with her, hugging her, sitting on her lap, rocking her for probably half an hour before I felt like I could ask her, "Are you going to be okay if I leave you with mom and dad on the phone?" She had calmed down a little bit, a notch down from meltdown to just sobbing, but she said yes. So I was able to go stick my head into the other classroom again. They were doing some worksheet or something like that, so I was able to get both of the instructors to come out into the hallway with me. Then and only then did they finally ask if Amelia was all right. "She will be, but you need to tell me right now if anything like that is going to happen again." They'd never dealt with a meltdown before. They didn't have any clue what to do. No, we're done with the videos. We're done with the driving simulator. "Are you sure that she's okay?" "She will be, but we're going to be staying in the other room for a while." "Well, do you guys want the worksheet? Are you sure that she's okay?" "Sure." I took the dumb worksheet. They handed it to me. I walked into the other room, immediately tossed it onto another desk, and sat on my sister's lap again. Stayed there for the rest of the day until the rest of the class had cleared out. We could go back in and get our things. At which point, our parents came and picked us up. Dad drove, I rode shotgun, mom took over sitting in the back with Amelia. Don't get me wrong, I would do every minute of that again in a heartbeat if my sister needed me to. I have zero regrets about my behavior that day. Scratch that, I have one regret about my behavior that day, and that's that I didn't actually punch the one guy who had the nerve to compliment his shit-eating grin with snickering. I mean, come on, can you imagine some dude in his 20s having to explain that he got punched by a 13-year-old girl? Can you imagine being 13 years old, having zero interest in driving, and attending a day-long course to build on your pre-existing driving skills? Can you imagine what would happen if I hadn't been there?
There were times looking back at it where I hated it, but at the time it was just immense gratitude. And like I said, the reason looking back why I hated it was, oh, there's another example of how I'm a failure as a big sister.
My sister needed more. That's just a fact. And so it was my job to need less in turn. And if you want to know how deep set my role as the easy child is, I will truthfully tell you, it goes back to the womb. When our mom was pregnant with Amelia, she lost so much weight because she couldn't keep any food down. Plain yellow potato chips. That was it. Not even Ruffles. That's a very important detail. She made sure I remembered it before I told the story. Not even Ruffles would stay down for longer than a couple of hours.
When our mom was pregnant with Alicia, she couldn't get enough food. What are you doing? You drove by the McDonald's! Okay, there's a Wendy's coming up and get past it. Get past it! Arby's? Come on, give me something!
Mom spent 30 hours in labor with Amelia at the hospital. That's just at the hospital. That's not counting the pre-hospital time. 30 hours. It took that long before our mom, tough lady that she is, finally just looked at the doctor and whimpered. "Oh, me." She says the doctor went over to the nurse and whispered something, and the nurse perked up right away. "The super sucker? I can get the super sucker!" They had to suck my sister out of the womb, and she was so ticked off about it that she broke Mom's pelvis on her way out just for good measure.
Mom spent 12 hours at the hospital in labor with Alicia. She and Dad brought calming instrumental CDs, and every doctor and nurse who walked into that room just relaxed. Oh, this room is so nice. She fell asleep between contractions, and Alicia was out of the womb so fast that the doctor actually tried to slow her down.
And the two of us have continued on that way ever since. I'm an adventurer, Amelia's a homebody. And I don't think that either one of those is a bad thing in and of itself. It's just when you're a homebody in a small town and everybody knows. For my entire childhood, all the way through elementary, middle, high school, and even sometimes into college, I was always recognized first as Amelia's sister. And I just knew what people meant by that. You're associated with failure, with meltdowns, with spoiled. No, absolutely not. Separate those negative connotations from me. You know what? Just separate her from me. We're done. We're through. Nope. No more of that. And you know what? It doesn't matter because she's more than any of those negative connotations. She's more than any of you, as a matter of fact. She's too much. But she wouldn't be Amelia if she wasn't. And let me tell you what, there is nobody in the world who could do the things that she did. Nobody on the planet. She was absolutely amazing.
Tell you what specific thing led to it anymore, but the teacher was dismissive, he was rude, he would slam on people's desks. He wouldn't have any regard for my needs. And I finally said, no, I can go to the special needs room. I can do that every hour of this class. I don't remember saying this specifically, but apparently the special needs teacher told me that I wasn't allowed to boycott it, that I had to go to the class. And Mom says that I looked at her and said, that's what they said to the ladies who were protesting for the right to vote. They weren't allowed to, but they did it anyway. So yeah, for a while I would just go to the special needs room every day for the regular time, and then also for math class. At some point, we had arranged a meeting. Mom said she couldn't go, so then I went and invited Dad. And Mom said, he's on the side of you should be going to class. And apparently I looked at him and said, you're uninvited. Well, he came anyway, so it didn't work. I'm still glad he did. Here's the other thing about this teacher. He was a basketball coach. He's a tall guy. So I had the meeting, and we worked something out to make it easier because of my needs. And so this guy that's about somewhere around 6 feet to this little high school girl steps up, looms over her, and says, I am the one in charge of this classroom. According to Mom, if you have to say that to the little high school girl, you're not in charge anymore.
She's absolutely right about that. And that was the proudest I had ever been of her. I mean, she was amazing. She was rebellious, she was badass, she was advocating for her needs. So naturally, when I had that same teacher for math a couple of years later, he was the first person to ever not identify me immediately as Amelia's sister. It's probably for the best. I don't think he was quite as proud of her as I was. But it would have been nice if somebody outside of our immediate family had seen what she was doing and said, wow, your sister's advocating for herself like that? I mean, that's awful that she has to, but that's amazing that she is. Because I would have agreed. I know that I would have. I mean, I was in middle school at this point, so I pretty solidly hated my sister, but that was the proudest I'd ever been. I was so proud. I was bragging about it. I would have agreed. I absolutely would have agreed. I would have agreed. I knew that it was amazing.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
Are you sure you're okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. I have to justify and insist that I was proud of my sister. Because if you knew me in those days, you would have doubted that I was telling the truth. But I am telling the truth about everything. I was so proud of her. And I really am fine right now. That sounds like a lie, doesn't it? Oh, but I am fine. How do I explain? As I always do with fandoms. Where are my Whovians at? Come on. Yeah, see, we're in the house. I've taken to calling this feeling my Cyberman mode. You see, if you're not familiar with Doctor Who, the Cybermen are enemies who have deleted all emotions. They view emotion as a hindrance and its deletion as upgrades, as progress. And you know what? God damn it if I don't believe them sometimes. I just think about it. No pain, no guilt, no hatred, no feeling guilty for hating the people you're supposed to love. Huh? I sound like a psychopath, don't I? Or a sociopath. And as much as I love my BBC Sherlock, you know, I'm not a psychopath, I'm a high-functioning sociopath. Do your research. I am aware that neither of those are a healthy life goal to have. But what can I say? I've always been a fan of the bad guys. Draco Malfoy was one of, if not my very first crush. The Joker is my favorite character of all time in anything. Let me tell you what, when we were elementary schoolers, we went to Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, and Amelia came up to me in one of the shops with the biggest grin on her face. She's like, Alicia, I found your shirt. I was like, we've never been here before. I'm not wearing anything from here. I don't know what you're, oh, yeah, you did find my shirt. You say villain like it's a bad thing. This is definitely my shirt. As you can see, I still own and frequently wear this shirt to this day, because it really is my shirt. When Amelia and I were kids, we didn't play with dolls or action figures or any of that. We played by us. And what I mean by that is we would embody the characters. So we would race from room to room, pretending that we were jumping rooftops. We would come up with their dialogue. We would try to do their voices, which she's clearly better at than I am. And we always had fun with it, and I was always the villain. I can only think of one of our games where she took on an antagonist role rather than me. And Jason Todd is an anti-hero, not a villain. Very important distinction. And I loved it. I had the time of my life being the villain, because I just knew what I had been told by my mom was true, that all the actors who play the bad guys are really the nicest people because they get all their evilness out through their characters. That was me. I got to get all my evilness out there and be a great person. I don't think I ever believed I was a great person. I absolutely had to be the villain, because I always am in my head. Anytime that I talk about these things, I talk about it being hard to have a sister with a disability, or I criticize her, or I criticize my parents, or anything that could be airing dirty laundry. It doesn't matter who's right. All that matters is that I'm telling it, and I shouldn't be. I'm the villain. And the only way that I can cope with that is if I do my darndest to delete all the negative emotions from my life. Hence, Cyberman mode. If I'm the Cyberman, she's definitely the Doctor. Far enough distance, and okay, there's just another human. And then you get up close and the words and actions start, and you start to realize this might not just be any other human. A few close companions can keep up on the whirlwind journey, but most everyone is just left behind in the wake, aware of this being's presence forevermore, but they can't keep up with the journey. Yeah, she's definitely the Doctor. She's got too much emotion for her one heart. It should be spilling over to the two hearts that Gallifreyans have. And I'm absolutely the Cyberman, deleting every negative emotion that I can, even if it ends up costing me the positive ones. Forever at odds. Except, Doctor did have a Cyberman companion for a while. Sort of a Cyberman head, don't overthink it, but his name was Handles. And as far as we know, aside from the TARDIS, Doctor's ship, Handles was the longest lasting companion of the Doctor. 300 years on Trenzalore together. 300 years is a long time to ask. I don't know that I could do that with anybody, let alone with my sister. But it doesn't matter if I can't, because it's not about me. The show is called Doctor Who for a reason, not the Cybermen. It's really not about me, even in the slightest. I'm a supporting character.
Still want me to record.
Of course I do. This isn't about me.
The thesis is your thing.
But it's not about me.
I don't want to take it over.
It's not about me! Nothing ever has been, nothing ever will be.
I knew that I wasn't able to be there for you the way you needed me to. And I hated it. The whole big sister, little sister dynamic has always been weird with us. But I will tell you about the first time that I really felt like I was there for you as a big sister. We were helping Mandy move. I still honestly don't know what was going on. I don't think you ever told me. You were in the truck, and I think Mom and Dad were still inside of her apartment getting stuff ready. And you just started crying, and I didn't know why. So I went over there and I gave you a hug, and you leaned on me, and you just cried for a while. And I was, it's okay, everything's gonna be all right. And I was rubbing your back, and we just did that for about a half an hour. I don't even remember what we did afterwards. I'm sure we did something to cheer up, but that part right there was very important to me. Because I'd just been talking with my therapist around that time too, about not feeling like I was the big sister and that I was letting you down. But it's like, yes! Not yes, but yes! Because I didn't want you to be sad, but yes, I got to be the big sister. And it felt really good to be there for you then. There's been other times since then too, but that's the one that was first.
I feel like I'm supposed to say now that it's all arbitrary anyways. That it doesn't matter who's the big sister, who's the little sister. We're just sisters. I can't do that though. Why would I want to? Why would I take that away from Amelia or from myself? Big, little sister, they both have burdens, but they've got joys too. And they've shaped us both from our time in each of them. The truth of the matter is, we fluctuate now, and I expect that we will for the rest of our lives. But that doesn't mean that we're just sisters. It means that sometimes she's the big sister, sometimes she's the little sister, sometimes I'm the big one, sometimes I'm the little one. We balance what the other needs. For example, when we went Christmas shopping this year, our parents were a little too focused on playing Pokemon Go. We still play that. And it really annoyed my sister because today was about Christmas shopping, not about Pokemon. And I was the one to pull them aside and be like, hey guys, I get it. It's my life too. I drive everyone crazy on campus playing it all the time, but maybe not today. Okay, let's do it tomorrow. Well, the next day we didn't get to because not 24 hours after that, I had an anxiety attack at Mass. And Amelia was the one who held my hand through the entire Mass, the entire car ride home. And as soon as we got home, she immediately went upstairs and got her weighted blanket and my teddy bear and brought them back for me. That way I could curl up under the weighted blanket, have that pressure to calm myself down, and my teddy bear for when everyone else was sick of me cuddling them. I didn't ask her to that day, but if I would have. So let the sun shine in, face it with a grin. Smilers never lose, and frowners never win. So let the sun shine in, face it with a grin. Open up your heart and let the sun shine in. And I'm actually going to pull the chair forward because I have an extra special guest for Q&A today. You've heard her voice this whole past 45 minutes or so. Now you get to see her face. My sister Amelia. So yeah, we are at your disposal. If you have any questions about the show, the stories, anything at all. And we will have a tech person monitoring the chat on YouTube as well. So if you have any questions in YouTube land, please feel free to type them in.
Something pop up here. If there's a question.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
So the numbers behind you, how did you have those drawings like that I see a million did so long ago?
Yeah, so the really great thing with that is our parents keep everything. I don't know. I'm not really sure what prompted our mom to ask her to draw them in middle. I don't know. You remember?
It was a book that mentioned it. I don't remember if it was within the graded book or a different one, but she asked, "Does this sound right?" Yeah. What they look like? Kind of hard to describe. Can you draw them? Sure.
Yeah. So she drew them back in 2007. We had another set that we couldn't identify the year.
Yeah, we didn't have the date on it, but we did have them in the folder. There's folders for both of us that are in the computer room that has their name on it and has different papers that have accumulated from our stuff throughout the years. And it's just in case of situations like this, apparently.
Yeah. And then with these ones, with the 2021 ones, I was like, hey, I have this really cool idea. You want to draw them for me again? Yeah, it's really cool.
I just want to say thank you. I'm about to go hang out with my sisters too, but I just feel this reified love every time I watch this performance and how you bring. I've seen a lot of Leisha's performance, and Amelia is never ever far from her repertoire. But this one is really special, and seeing how you brought it together and seeing you both together on the stage, I feel like it's the most excellent natural conclusion of this performance. And I'm so happy that we all got to witness part of this special relationship.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you so much, guys.
There's a question.
Tell her all about you.
There's a question from Shauna McDonald. I have so many thoughts and things to say or ask. We'll do that another time, but let me ask how you decided on framing the piece through literature and fandom.
Oh, yeah. So, as anyone who has more than a 5-minute conversation with me knows, everything I process is through fandom references. Like, that is how I make sense of the world. The Cyberman mode thing, that's really like what I do. And so having the fandom books was a really nice way to kind of naturally lead into that. Having the Civ books was a really good way to kind of bring back the feelings that I had when I was that young, when Amelia first got diagnosed. You know, I was 7 years old and I don't remember it very well necessarily at all times, just because it was so long ago, but having, you know, the Sibling Slam book where I actually wrote down my words when I was 7 or 9 or whatever I was, it made for a really good way to be able to not only talk about how I had first been introduced to the conversation around being a Civ, or the minimal conversation that there is, but also then to look back at it and go, okay, wow, like I read this book as an 11-year-old, and there were things then that I needed to read then, and there are other things that I don't know that I needed to read that then.
Speaking as a member of your family, I've always seen the similarities in your interests between the comic book characters and Doctor Who and everything else. But it's been nice to kind of be educated that yes, you have similarities, but yes, you have differences. And it explains a lot. It's very cool.
I have a question. So this is not that helpful to the viewing audience because, well, I guess a couple people in the viewing audience saw it on Thursday as well. And some of you are seeing it for the first time. But Alicia, how did you feel performing it a second time? And Amelia, how did you feel experiencing it a second time? And yeah, just similarities, differences. I don't know. What was the experience?
Performing it a second time was cool. I feel like I was more relaxed this time. If you weren't watching on Thursday, we had some technical difficulties on Thursday evening with the audio and the slides, and so that kind of created a whole different vibe. Whereas today, we also had technical difficulties. As you know, if you're on YouTube, this isn't the original link that I posted, but not the same kind of technical difficulties. Those were more preparatory technical difficulties that we had today. So I felt like once I was able to get on the stage, everything ran fairly smoothly. We still had a couple of little audio hiccups, but not nearly as rocky as Thursday was. So I think I felt a lot more relaxed today than I did on Thursday.
I was fairly well aware of what was going to be said, not only because I had the script before, because I needed to record my lines, but also there was a lot of interviews. There was a lot of time in between that was talking about all these memories and all these stories, and then there was also, it was made quite clear from the start that if one of us didn't want something in there, then it wasn't going to be in there. So I knew everything that was going to, I didn't actually enact anything to be cut, but the knowledge that I could help. And yeah, I knew everything that was going to be said. So it's still an experience, but it's a different experience when you see a movie the first time to when you've seen it 6 or 7 times.
Mhm.
Which is something that we do at our house.
All the time. We are big on rewatching.
Alicia, I wonder, when you read those books when you were that young, were you motivated or, parents said, hey, you should know, or the other professionals that read this book?
So I will say professionals do nothing for Sims. Like, that's just a fact. Professionals talk about families and they really mean mothers. And don't get me wrong, mothers are amazing. Mothers deserve all the support and love. So do fathers, so do siblings. Like, we need that. These books, I think, were a combination of my parents being wonderful, and there was actually a lady from our church who, her son is my age and is autistic, and she also has 2 other children. And from there, when we got Amelia diagnosed, she connected with Mom on that and was like, hey, there's this really cool program called Sim Shop. Don Meyer, you should look him up. The best human being on the face of the earth. And so it was really through those interpersonal relationships that we were able to get anything for me. And then we had that kind of awkward time of, because Sim Shop is intended for 8 to 13-year-olds. So, when you start aging out of that, and then you're like, well, okay, now what? And then I kind of had those years where I was like, now what? Okay. And it wasn't until undergrad when I found like the Facebook groups that are basically the adult versions of Sim Shop, where you get to connect with other Sims. So
Sounds to me like between 13 and 18, I think those are the really crucial times for, adolescents to know who they are. And I wonder why there's a gap there.
there's such a gap. And that's why, I'm part of Sim 20 and SimNet because I didn't find it until I was in my 20s, but they have a Sim Teen group too. And I'm just like, please, dear God, if you have Sims in your life, get them into these groups. Because I really think that would have made a huge difference in my teenage years. I think that the isolation that I felt during that time definitely had a negative impact. Whereas feeling more connected now,
and having had time to work through some of these things. I've worked through, this thesis performance has been a product of the past 5 years, because I really started diving into these things during my undergrad. And so, but it's all been not on my own in that, like, I've had the support of my family, I've had Amelia support, which is amazing. But, and once I discovered SibNet and Sib20 online, but there's never been any professional support except for that which SibShop provided when I was a kid. And other groups related to that have provided once I rediscovered them.
We have 2 questions from YouTube land. One is, so I'm going to just, I'm going to start with the second one that popped up first because it's kind of related to this a bit. From Sherry Bowen, how has your understanding of yourself changed through this project, Alicia? And then, and Honeybee, I did not forget your question, so we'll come right back to that one. Okay.
Yeah, it's been wild, you know. One of the things with this is I've said a lot that Amelia's Asperger's is at the core of who we both are. And I think I've talked about this offhand before, but you know, the separation of negative connotations away from me, her away from me, and then the minute I got away from home, I was like, let me tell everyone about, hi, I'm Alicia and I'm a Sib. Let me tell you what that means. Let me tell you about my sister. Let me tell you all of this. But I think some of that still was selfishly motivated at times. Let me tell you about this so you can understand me, like just me. And I think doing this thesis project has really not only been a chance for us to do something amazing together, but for it to become, you know, about us. I want people to know about my sister because she's the best. Not just, I want you to know about her because I want you to understand me. It's, I want you to know about her because I want you to know about the people in my life and how wonderful she is. So I guess in the TLDR terms, I've hopefully matured a little through this. Shots fired.
Headache.
But like we talked about the other day too, the presence of these books that were so instrumental in helping you understand and cope growing up have now become something that you're contributing back to with this, like this piece is you creating your own, telling that story in a way to help others and move that beyond you, which is really cool. Okay, this question from Honeybee. Alicia, I'm curious on your thoughts on how your use of space played a role in your performance.
Again, at my heart there, Honeybee. Yeah, so I had a really fun time figuring out like the spacing of this. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to create kind of the symmetry of, having the 2 chairs there, having the platforms there, but then also on the one hand, you have the messy bedroom where kind of the more personal conversations happen. And then you have this very sterile, like, here's where the problems are. And like trying to have that separation. And then when I start pacing and it's all getting blurred together, I'm a very spatial thinking person. So it really, as I was writing the script, it came very naturally to me to be like, okay, here's where this part's gonna happen. Here's where that part's gonna happen. Now memorizing where each part was gonna happen, that was a whole different story. That was quite the thing. But yeah, I'm Evan and Heidi and Jake were the ones who came up with the idea of, laying the books out on the floor to expand the space more and kind of add some color to the stage because we love to add color to things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, at the same time, I had fun laying out the things and kind of watching them make the world kind of like become, okay. apologies if anyone has not watched WandaVision, but that's my text. That's my border of, okay, I'm stepping through this and now this is a layer of how I figure out the world. I'm stepping through this and this is a layer of how I figure out the world. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, I can continue rambling, but.
That's great. And if don't hesitate to jump in too, but we have another question from the viewing audience out there. For Amelia, how is the process of being interviewed by Alicia and having part of your story being told by her? How was that process? And this is from Alex and Laura.
Before it happened, it was a lot of stress, but during the actual interviewing, we just talked. It was telling stories, remembering fun stuff, remembering our games, remembering things that we would do. And a lot of the stress built up beforehand was all in my own head. I was just with those, I don't know what's expected of me to be said, so,
Well, if I can build on that too, because a lot of the stress came from Amelia, like she said in the show, not wanting to take this over.
yeah, there was that too. I was always very aware, just because I couldn't help that it was happening, I was still always very aware of how much I was taking things over, and how very much that made you not like me. So, I try very, very hard to give you your bubble, your space. This is your K-pop is your thing. This communication is your thing. Like, I will reach in and dabble, that way I can communicate. But, and sometimes I'll find some cool stuff along the way, but this was your project, this was your thesis, this is what you were been building for your entire college career. And now all of a sudden you want me in there and kind of, no, I've done this before. This is not a good idea.
Yeah, just following that, when you first talked to me about this project, right? I thought it was so brilliant. It's about you, who you are, but then you have this so important and integral part. So I was wondering how you feel about how you came up with the idea and how you feel about like you versus us, like this kind of the demarcation or connection there.
I will say it was like a cartoon moment. Like I had like the light bulb over my head, strike of lightning, all that. I think I was walking the campus, and it was like a Saturday afternoon, and I thought of it. And so I called the house right away because we saw the house phone. And Amelia picked up and I was like, "Are mom and dad there?" And she's like, "No, did you want to?" I'm like, "Good." And she was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "I have an idea. Do you want to record voiceover for my thesis?" And she's like, "Sure, if you want me to." I must have been going somewhere because I couldn't stay on the phone long.
I remember more clearly you talking about it to me in the dining room, actually. At some point. I don't remember if we had been in the talk for a while, but it's like, this is gonna be a surprise. We're gonna do like, I don't know if we should do the surprise. Mom doesn't like surprises. You're right, we're gonna make her cry. We're gonna, like, okay, if you don't want me to tell, I won't tell, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it was not a surprise. We did end up telling my mom. Did we tell her during winter break or did we tell her in the summer?
I don't remember what time of year it was, but I remember that it was in the kitchen, and she did indeed cry when you told her.
We're just outing you as a weeper, mom.
To be fair, I cry a lot too, so.
Don't think that's a bad thing.
Couple more. Oh, got another question. Are we good? Just clear. I gotcha. Okay. First of all, Honeybee replied to your response about the space, the use of space, saying your explanation helped me understand your performance in a new way. Thank you. And then a question from Dr. Sloan. what motivated you to engage in autoethnography rather than a phenomenology from Amelia's perspective?
Bring out your head with a hard question.
She is a PhD.
Lydia's got some techno terms for you. Yeah. So I will say I adore autoethnography as a method. That's a really good question. I think because ultimately I have words. I'm a comp student. I just need my buffering time.
You're good. I can help you there. Based on what you wrote, based on what we discussed, all the things that you read for building through the prospectus, et cetera. But I'm also able to just be sort of filling space while you're thinking, but I can.
No, I mean, ultimately, it is my thesis, Well, I think it would have been interesting. I don't know if
Well,
even really know methodologies.
but
Asked me to do something from it.
But
Yeah,
Alicia,
so-
but what were some of the things that remember when you were doing some of these performances earlier that were very focused on you? What were some of the critiques that you got?
I had people worry that it was therapy rather than therapeutic. I always have the criticism of, how it's ableist to critique my sister because she has a disability. And that is frankly one of my biggest pet peeves because for crying out loud, my sister's a human being. One of the really important things to me is to normalize the idea that we can have conversations around people with disabilities that aren't either, oh my gosh, everything in my life sucks because of them, or they taught me kindness and compassion and just everything. And it's like, no. She's a human being, I'm a human being. She sucks sometimes, I suck sometimes. Like, let's just talk about it like we're normal, and we're not normal, and there's absolutely things that matter related to her disability, related to my own issues. But I think autoethnography really gave me the chance to dive in and play it from both of our perspectives in a way, especially having her voice.
Exactly.
In it.
Exactly. You're not speaking for
Yeah, we're
Amelia.
speaking with each other.
Right. That I think is key.
So I'm gonna jump in because you said some people think that's therapy. And Thursday night, the comment was, why didn't you go to some of the darker things versus keeping what this is? Not in a critical, why didn't you do it, but just a question, why not? And I responded then, because this isn't therapy. This is your opportunity to let somebody else see that they're not alone. We've always said, everybody has something. Amelia's just lucky enough to have a name for hers. But there are so many siblings out there that don't have the name put to them of, I'm a sibling. And that's okay. I have problems, I have needs, and I don't have to feel guilty about that. And I think that you're putting this out there, not just for the education of us, but somebody's gonna watch this on YouTube at some time and say, oh my gosh. That's
Not, oh my
how
God.
I've been, right, not, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. That is how I've been feeling, and you mean it's okay not to be good, not to feel bad. And I think that for you putting that out there shows your heart and shows your compassion and shows your passion to make sure that people understand that people are people, no matter what label they have.
Well, that could be a lovely place to potentially wrap up unless others have questions or comments that weren't voiced.
Awesome. I thought, I thought it was like really decent, like what you were doing, like how this was all set up, like how like the room was set up over there. And I don't know. I thought it was really cool. So that's what I had to say. So yeah.
YouTube
All
land,
right.
this is your last chance.
Hmm?
I said YouTube land, this is your last chance, except not really, because if you're watching folks live, just make a comment on the video, I will still go reply, but this is your last chance for live vocal responses.
There are a few of them out there, but they're being quiet. Well, we could just give you,
You don't have the money to pay those royalties.
you just got one more amazing job, and we can give you a final round of applause. Thank you all. And did you plan what you were wearing here?
No.
Not even a little.
I thought there was a nice symmetry.
We're just continuing the symmetry theme.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I didn't even notice that.
That was like the first thing I noticed. I didn't notice it ahead of time, but as soon as Amelia went up there, I was like, oh, color scheme. I did not stop it.
This is the end for real, YouTube land. Thank you so much. We love you all, and you're the best. Stay safe, make good choices, and win the day.